Hey guys, it's Crystal from Confections, and I'm getting ready for Pi Day. March 15th, or 3.15, is Pi, P-I, or Pi, P-I-E Day. Whichever one you want or both. A lot of people are going to celebrate by baking a full round 8 or 9 inch pie. Now I don't know about you, but I don't have enough people in my home right now to help eat a whole pie. So we're doing something a little different this year. Chili's used to have on their menu a dessert called Paradise Pie. Now, what's exciting about this is it is a perfect individual or couple portion. It uses a 1-quart casserole dish. So you get 4 good slices out of there. One nice dig in, just get the fork and dig in there. You can share it however you want. So this is a good small portion dessert to be excited about. Okay, first thing we're going to do is melt butter. We want to get this ready because it needs to cool. We need 3 tablespoons of butter. So most butter sticks have this measurement on it. Tablespoons, 1, 2, and 3. Not completely a smooth cut. You're not always going to get one. That's okay. This kind of recipe is going to be very forgiving, so don't get too worked up about having it or not. One thing I like to do with my butter is then slice it a bit more because it melts a little quicker and more evenly, so you're not pressed for time. Put your butter into a dish. I use a nice glass microwavable dish. Pop it in the microwave for 15-second increments. Stir each time as the butter melts to help it melt evenly and faster. Once it is all melted, set it out to cool. Don't let your butter melt or start cooking too much. If it only needs a few more seconds in the microwave on your last round, go ahead and reduce that time. Otherwise, 15 seconds, maybe 2 or 3 rounds, and you should be good to go. All right, guys, there's our melted butter. Hot melted butter, no solid pieces left. We stirred it up a little bit in that last 15 seconds. We had a few solid parts. Stir it up again a little bit and you should be good to go. We set that aside to cool because if we add it to our ingredients while it is still hot, it's going to start cooking them, and we don't want that to happen. Our ingredients will then be at different temperatures and it won't cook evenly. Now this is a recipe that's pretty forgiving, so it won't really hurt anything too much, but something to keep in mind. Adding melted butter to recipes, in many instances, you're going to want that melted butter to be cooled instead of hot. For the rest of the ingredients in this recipe, you can find it in the description below on the video, or you can have a printed copy to keep on hand. I always make mine either in a notebook or on notebook paper so that I can scribble all kinds of notes on it after I bake it. That way, if there's something I'd like to change for the future, if a time didn't work or a mix didn't work, you can have all kinds of notes. I have one for pies, for a regular dish pie. I always forget to build the pie wall. So I have in big capital letters, build the wall, next to my instructions on how I'm going to make the crust. So we all have our reminders that we need to put in. So having a notepad, notebook paper, having something physical can be really helpful in that regard. Okay, now we have our butter melted. We're going to work on our next part, which is our crust. For our crust, we have a 1/3 cup graham cracker crumbs, which you can buy them already prepared. You can have just graham crackers that you crumble up yourselves, or even something like a graham flavored cereal or graham flavored snack. Go ahead and grind them up. Just make sure it's a fine powder almost. To that we add 3 tablespoons of granulated sugar and then our butter. And what this is going to do, this is going to form our base or our crust. So we get as much of that butter out as we can. And then we're going to stir this up, and you're going to see how it doesn't look at first like the liquid is going to cover all the dry ingredients, but that's okay. It will. Everything's going to get moist. We want it to form a crust that has some form to it, so we don't want it to be too wet either. So just keep mixing it, folding it over. Just basically play with it like it's sand. Move it around. Make sure all the wet ingredients kind of get in there. If you want a more even distribution, you could even mix up your graham cracker and your sugar before you add your butter, which is what I should have done. Because as you can see, I'm getting some of the sugar parts are clumping right now, separate from the graham cracker. So if you had mixed them up before I added my butter, you have a little more even distribution. All right, so I'm going to try and get some of those bits chopped up where I can now. So it's a little extra time. Bopping the camera. All right, so that looks pretty good. We have every part is moist. All right, so now that we have our crust ready, our pan is not greased because this dough, this crust, is going to be buttery enough where we don't have to worry about it. So we're going to get that into the dish. Let's get all the parts. All right. Now we're going to push it down. You can use your hand for this part. You can use a measuring cup. You can use your spatula. But basically you're trying to push it down evenly into the dish. It's going to want to try and right up on those corners. You can just tap it back down. Now, the tricky part is always trying to make it even. It's okay if it's not completely even, but you want to try and make sure that you don't get some really thick parts in there and some really thin parts, because then it's not going to bake up well. All right. Just go around a few more edges. Yes, I do sing to myself while I bake. I also talk to myself. What are some fun things you do when you bake alone? Do you have any funny quirks? Tell me in the comments. All right. So our crust looks pretty good there. What we're going to do next is we're going to take it and add our chocolate chips. So what we needed for this was our 1/3 cup chocolate chips, which I'm going to pour out now. And we're going to lay those on top. Now, why are we doing this? Well, the chocolate chips, because they are how they're made, they're going to take a little while to get to a melting consistency. These are designed to keep their shape for cookies. So what we want is these to melt. Now, you can use other chocolate if you don't want to use chocolate chips. You can use baker's chocolate. If you want to use a Nutella spread, you can basically use any kind of chocolate you want for this layer. So what we're doing with this recipe, we're going to use chocolate chips, and they're going to sit on top of the crust. So we pop it in the oven. So by the time the crust is ready for us to take out, the chocolate chips should be ready, should be pretty well melted for us to spread. Okay, so we're going to pop this into a 350-degree oven that has been preheated, and we're going to bake for about 5 minutes. We don't want it to burn. We don't want it to really start cooking too much. We just want the crust to start to dry out a bit, and we want the chocolate to start melting. All right. This is fresh out of the oven. We're going to leave our oven at 350. And now we're going to smear the chocolate over the crust. You can do this with a butter knife. You can do it with your rubber spatula. I'm using an offset spatula. I'm going to try and get those corners and those edges. This is just going to create a chocolate layer for us on our crust. As you can see, I probably didn't select the right size tool for the job, and that is a-okay. Still gonna make it work. Make sure your dish is on a pot holder or somewhere that can take the heat, because this is gonna be hot. And you do not want to be burning yourself on it. All right, some of these edges. You can see some of the crust moving around. That's okay too. We don't want it to completely come apart, so I'm going to fix some of that. But you can see that the crust is still kind of soft. We didn't want it to bake. This isn't the part where we wanted it to bake yet. And there's going to be so much ingredient on top of the crust, you're not going to have to worry about it being overcooked anyway. All right, so I'm not going to go to the full edges. I think we're pretty good here. Just want to make sure it's even. It's even enough for a snack. Oh, it smells so good. All right, I'm going to wipe this off at the side and get that cleaned off a bit, or just make a smear. Make it a big mess instead. That's all right. Save some of that chocolate for later. Okay, so now we're going to set this aside because now we're going to make our filling. All right, guys, time for our filling. So what we're doing is we're adding the dry ingredients first into a bowl. Now this does not have to be done in a stand mixer. This very easily can be done by hand or with a hand mixer. Okay, so here we have our 1/2 cup flour, 1/4 cup granulated sugar, and 3/4 teaspoon, oh goodness, baking powder. And we are just going to mix these up so that they're well blended. All right, something a little quick. And then we're gonna add our liquid ingredients. All right, now we've added our wet ingredients, which include our 1/3 cup milk, our 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract, and 1 tablespoon. The recipe calls for canola oil. I use vegetable oil instead. You could use either or, that's fine. Okay, so we add those into our dry ingredients and we are going to mix them up until smooth. We're gonna keep it on low. As you can see, that does not take very long for these ingredients to get mixed up at all. Definitely use a spatula, scrape down the sides to get those dry bits, and then we'll be good to move on to the next part of adding our chunkier ingredients. Alright guys, now we're ready to add in our mix-ins. So what we have here is a 1/3 cup of chocolate chips, a 1/4 cup of shredded coconut, and a 1/4 cup of chopped walnuts. You can always add a little more or less depending on your preferences. We're just going to add them in, stir them really quick, and then we'll be ready to add this to our crust. All right, that's it. You just want to make sure they're good and coated so that they're going to sit in the pie. All right, so once our mix-ins are well coated, we're going to take them straight from the bowl, and we want to put them evenly on our crust. Plop them in. Plop them in first, smooth them out later. You want to scrape that bowl and get as much of that filling out as you can. You spent the money to get the ingredients, and you spent the time making it. You want to get all the goodness you can out of there. Alright, so now that we're all plopped up, we are just going to spread that around evenly. See what I'm talking about? We have plenty of filling on top of this crust, so it's not going to be a problem that some of the crust is moved around. I'm seeing that some of my mix-ins aren't evenly spread out, so I'm going to try and push them around a little bit, smooth them out a little. You can do it, you can not do it, that's fine. All right. Well, that is it for our bake. What we're going to do next is pop this baby in the oven, uncovered, for 35 to 40 minutes. What I recommend is starting on the earliest time, so 35 minutes, and then checking on it. What you want to do is use a toothpick in the middle. If it comes out clean, you're done. If it does not come out clean, put it in for another 5 minutes, 2 to 5 minutes, and do those small increments, checking until it's done. All right. Looks good. Off into the oven we go. Quick tip when you're popping that back into the oven, it's still going to be pretty hot, so make sure you're using your oven mitts. Make sure you don't burn yourself. Your oven should have stayed on the whole time. If you turn it off and turn it back on, it's just going to take a little longer to get back up to temp. Just leave it on 350. It really doesn't take long to make these things, to make this recipe and have it come together. So your oven can just stay at 350 the whole time. All right, well, we've got it set for 35 minutes. We'll check it in a bit, and if the toothpick comes out clean, I'll show you the final. What point does a word lose meaning, right? I will show you what it looks like at the end. One fun thing about this dessert is Chili's used to serve it with a scoop of ice cream, vanilla ice cream, chocolate syrup, and caramel. You can pretty much do whatever you want to top this off. Ice cream would really suit it well, especially if you're going to eat it coming out of the oven fresh. Get that nice little melt on top of the cake. This is a sweet dessert, so having a flavor like vanilla is going to help offset that a bit. But you can also dig right in. The flavors of the walnut, the coconut, and the chocolate work really well together to make this nice little bar dessert, this little pie bar dessert, really tasty and fun and flavorful. All right, guys, I'll see you in a little bit and we'll check in on our bake. All right, so we've taken it out of the oven after 35 minutes. Our toothpick came out clean. We have our nice small pie dessert. Now, there's chocolate in here. It's going to be very hot. So while you could cut this up right now and serve it with your ice cream and everything else, I recommend letting it cool for a little bit. Once you burn your mouth, you can't really enjoy the flavor of anything else for a few days. So let's avoid that. All right, so I'm going to pop this bad boy in its dish as is. We're going to pop it over on the cooling rack. I'll be back once it's cooled to get a nice cut. We'll go see how it looks on the inside, see how well we did. All right. Don't worry if yours looks a little more brown or a little less brown than mine. If your toothpick came out clean, then you're fine. My toothpick came out with a little bit of chocolate and a few crumbs on it, which is fine. I'm saying fine a lot, I've noticed. But it is, it's fine. It came out with crumbs. There's no batter on it, so we know that the bake is cooked. And it's going to continue baking while it's still in this dish, while it's on the cooling rack. So it's okay that it didn't come out completely clean. Anytime they say a toothpick comes out clean, you're still, especially baking with chocolate, you're still going to have something on there. You just want to make sure that you're not coming up with cake batter or any kind of raw dough. All right, so if you need to pop yours back in the oven for a few minutes, remember, do small increments of maybe 1 to 2 minutes. Check on it again. If it looks really underbaked, maybe go 5 minutes. Use your best judgment. And if you make a mistake, that's okay. Make a note for next time so you can kind of get a feel for which oven temperature, 350, and what time worked for you for your oven. Ovens are very different. Mine's an electric oven. You may be using convection or gas. Yours may be bigger or smaller than mine. So your baking time may differ. Also, the type of baking dish you use can affect it. So make sure you're taking notes so that you know how long your bake is going to last, and you can really nail it next time. All right, make sure also note what works for that same reason. Okay, I'm finally gonna go put this over on the cooling rack because I'm looking forward to digging in. All right, see you in a bit. All right, guys, let's see how this guy looks. We cut him open. All right. I am going to cut mine into quarters. That's a good solid crust. I get in there. There we go. All right. Remember to work around the sides just to get it a little loose. All right. Get under there. Oh, it smells amazing. You've got that coconut, the walnuts, the chocolate. Seriously, I mean, I don't know if you're gonna be able to hold off until you get your ice cream to start digging into this slice. Oh, buddy. And look at that. It's a good portion. Not too big, not too small. You got 4 of these babies. All right, guys, thanks so much for joining me for this bake-along and making the paradise pie from Chili's. This is the copycat recipe. It smells so good. Go get your toppings, go get your ice cream, and dig in. All right, see you next time. Make sure to post in the comments if you gave it a try, if you have any questions, if there is any trouble you ran into. Also, the recipe will be available in a text format on the blog, casualconfections.com. See you next time, and happy Pie Day.